am I tonight? Play per ego.
Depends. Will your friend, the footballer, be there?
Oh, friend, football friend!
Oh, what a superb goal! Stefan Moore, that is extraordinary from Ben Garuccio.
You're listening to Football Friends with Ben Garuccio and Stefan Moore, and what a week it's been for the boys. The cat's out the bag as Steph officially rejoins his beloved Reds, and Ben bags another goal as Western took to Tassie. As always, we'll hear all the boys' thoughts from their games and the others from the latest A-League men's weekend. And no technical difficulties this time as Chloe Logarzo finally joins the podcast list just a mere 36 hours prior to her now announced return to the Matildas. All that and more coming up on Football Friends.
Hello guys and welcome to episode 16 of Football Friends with Ben and Steph, and it's a big episode this week because my mate, he's back, he's in a job. Signed with Adelaide last week. Obviously played your first game on the weekend. And how was it? How was it obviously to come back to the Reds for the third time and obviously play your first game as well?
Yeah, it was it all happened quite quick. Obviously we were negotiating for quite a long time and I still, had those aspirations to try and stay over, but it came to the point where they said, listen, they need to know yes or no. They're trying to sign some other players, which they still are, obviously trying to make a few more signings if the right players come up. So it was a really tough decision and probably something that I hadn't been in before. I'd never been off contract. So it was a really actually stressful time. You get different offers coming through or different people saying they're interested, but, to get the right move and the opportunity to come back to Adelaide obviously presented itself. And I thought, now's the time once they gave the deadline. So kind of got all the paperwork done on what was it, the Thursday, Friday morning, did the heart stuff, and then, straight in the squad for the game on Saturday, thinking this would be great, first game back. And yeah, it was a horrible game, obviously, to come on when you're 3-0 down. I actually came on in Japan for my debut when we were 3-0 down, and I got a red card. So I did one.
It was a bit better.
It was a yellow card in this game only, so it actually didn't end up being that bad. I've had worse in debuts. So, but you know what? As I obviously said after the game, it's disappointing. We've got a lot of room for improvement, but we've got the players that can do it. So I think we'll go out there this week and we'll really show show the league what we can do, and it's on us as players. The coaching staff are obviously going to be there to support us, but when we go out on the field, we need to produce. And Central Coast are a top team. We just need to make sure that from here till the end of the year, we're giving absolutely everything to make the finals. But you really want to be pushing for that top 4 spot. So anyway, that's enough of Adelaide United talk. We'll jump straight to your game. I was actually watching that before, and you lads were 2-0 down, and then I was getting some treatment, checked the score again, and I saw it was 2-2, and you scored. So very strange things happening down in Hobart. You getting on the score sheet, but then you also got injured.
Yeah, well, I don't understand what you're saying. It's my second goal in 3 games. I'm on a hot streak. But
the commentator said, I think, what's your 7th goal in your A-League career? I think it was.
Probably.
So you're maybe, you're not, at least you're nowhere near the record of I think, who was it? Someone had 100 or 150 games without scoring a goal. Was Jason Guerrier scored?
Jace Guerrier had a massive one.
And Stefan
Negro,
Negro,
other
I think,
players
was up
as
there.
well. No, it's
so
not
you're
that
nowhere
bad.
near. You're
It's-
nowhere near.
Yeah,
that.
it's fine.
Yeah, you're not.
It's
You're
fine.
not too bad. So you know what? And you got back 2-0 down, and you got back to 2-2. So it's not a win, but for you boys, a point is probably quite good, isn't it?
Well, look, it's not 3. I think we need 3 in every game. From here on out, to be honest, we need to be looking for 3 points in every game. But in the circumstance of the game, it's a great result, to be 2-0 down. I think probably the way our season's gone, it could have went the other way and you end up losing the game, 3 or 4-0, and then it becomes embarrassing. And it's never a happy camp when you're losing games by those margins. So it was good. It was positive to get back into the game. I think to get that goal before halftime was massive because they scored 2, and then you go into halftime and it's kind of a bit flat. But because we got that one goal, and then straight after that we actually had like another decent chance. So we knew that there was going to be chances in the game for us. That's why I made my way into the box and put it away. But it was good. It was good to get the draw. We had chances to get all 3 points in the end, but I think that's what we need. We fought in the game. It was a pretty ugly game if you're a neutral, I would say. A lot of fighting, but that's the position that we're in at the moment. We need a scrap. We need a fight for every moment in every game, and we need players to step up. And I think players did step up on the weekend, and we need that from now to the end of the season.
Yeah, and it was not a bad crowd. It would be great if they had a real football specific stadium down there, which I know they, I think Tony Pinata came out with plans or trying to get support from government for $80 million to build a facility down there in Tasmania. And not saying you guys are going to be down there by the time that's all done, but it's great to, I guess, on a positive note, to be down in Tasmania to try and give them some A-League women's and men's football, and hopefully that helps them with getting an A-League team in the future, but also getting this funding from the local government, because that's something that he spoke about, and I loved when he came out with the numbers that are getting to AFL, to basketball, to football, and football is the the sibling that's always mistreated and getting the scraps, and showing that you're getting almost 5,000 people to a game between teams that have no relevance, shows that there's an appetite there in Tasmania for football. So we'll see. Maybe when you play Adelaide United in that catch-up game, we might be down in Tassie again, because I wouldn't mind going to check it out. I haven't been there. So
it's actually it's a good place, to be honest, and the pitch is actually really good there. It's just a shame that obviously the stands, they're a little bit far away. You want to play in a rectangular stadium, and I think, Hobart, Tassie's crying out for it. We've spoken about it before, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few years down the track there is something there for a Tasmanian side. But let's go, I suppose, into the other games. And we started the round with Brisbane at home to Wellington, and Brisbane stole the draw in the end. Corey Brown off the bench comes on, scores a header. And what did you kind of make of that game?
Yeah, it was an interesting game. I guess it was, one of those ones where especially for Brisbane, they had those couple injuries just before halftime, 2 separate injuries. So you've got to make 2 forced changes, which kind of throws you off. We had, who we haven't mentioned about, but we give our best wishes to Ben Kahn and his recovery as well. And, that's their 4th coach in 26 days. You've got Zadkovic coming in now and taking over. And football is obviously, you joke around and say, life and death, football is much more important. But the reality is, football is second to what obviously, his health is, and that's most important. So it's great that he can focus on that, and it gives Zadkovic another chance as well. So it was good for Brisbane to get the result at the end. Wellington, I guess, another strong performance, probably disappointed to drop the points there. But onto the next game for both of those two. And another Friday night game, Perth and Melbourne City. Crazy game, really. Melbourne City, they've got such a good squad. They've got so many players. They've just signed a few more, obviously, in Jago and Tilio. But they couldn't get the points done against the ownerless Glory. And it was what were they, 2-1 down, and then they were 3-2 up in the space of minutes. So, the Glory boys, after us getting collar on last week, they're flying. Couple wins in 3 weeks. And they're really, really looking like a good team all of a sudden.
And he was hungry for a goal, because he was shooting from everywhere, and he should have scored. Yeah, for sure, he should have scored. But I went to sleep half time because I had the game the next day, and it was a pretty late game being in Perth. But woke up in the morning, I couldn't believe it. Perth 4-2. So. Fair play to them. They're getting results at the moment. They're going on a bit of a run, which they needed, and congrats to Perth. Obviously, we touched on my game. Yeah, we'll go straight on to the Newcastle versus Victory 1-1 as well. Shares spoiled there.
Yeah, and I guess we both would have been playing or getting ready for the game, so we've just seen, the highlights and seen a little bit of this one. But you know what? All the results, as bad as, for you guys, obviously you're down the bottom, but still, a lot of teams drop points. There was 3 draws this week, which is great for all the other teams. Macarthur beat West Sydney, which we get to at the end, but then also Perth beating City, and keeping that. It's really congested now in that, what is it, probably even all the way up to the top, to be honest. Top till probably Perth Glory. You guys are a little bit further behind, but, it's still so tight. You go on a run of winning games like Central Coast have done, and you jump straight up the table. So it's really interesting because then Victory are undefeated still, yet they've dropped a lot of points late in games, and AP stepped up. He missed the penalty in that game, but then comes up big at the end with it. Yeah, and comes up clutch, obviously, with a top finish, and for Victory you'd be thinking, so many points dropped in the last minutes, and they may go the whole season undefeated, but may not finish top if they draw too many games. So it's really interesting. It's so tight. And then our last game, which was the Bulls v Western Sydney, and it was the match of the round. 4-3, an absolute thriller. 3-3 at halftime. The tackles were flying in. Obviously, it's the West Sydney derby, really, where you've got Macarthur, Southwest. You've got, the Western Sydney Wanderers, who probably have the best fans in the league, with Victory when they all rock up. And you could feel the tension just watching the game. Obviously, Rudin and Miller Stajovski probably both got into their players about, this means a lot. And the performance in extreme heat was top. A lot of controversial decisions. There was the red card that could have went to Jermaine that wasn't seen. There was obviously the red card that was given. Whether it was a red card or not, we're obviously not going to comment on those. And then obviously the goal at the end as well that was given, potentially not over the line. But it was a handball as well, I think. So it could have been given a penalty. And then Rudin's obviously come out in the press conference and was fuming. As I guess as a coach, if you're a fan of that team, if you're, the players in that team, it's always good when your coach goes into bat for you. But the tensions would have been high at Campbelltown Stadium, I think, after that game.
Yeah, that game had honestly everything. Hat trick for Jermaine, red cards, just goals everywhere, 7 goals. And I suppose, you do feel for Western Sydney and Rudin, because that goal, you need the cameras to show the angles, whether the ball's actually over the line or not. And for me, you couldn't tell at all from the footage that was shown if the ball was over the line or not. And then you lose a game of football because of that. So I can understand the frustrations. But if you're a Macarthur player, you're buzzing. Jermaine's definitely buzzing because he got his hattie. And Macarthur got 3 points. So
and it's hard, because if we didn't have VAR though, it's given it a goal anyway. So you didn't have the technology to overrule it. So I don't know. It's just, there's always going to be these decisions. It is what it is. I'm not one. I love arguing with the referees as well on the field. And once the game's done, though, it is what it is. Like, you can't change anything. Like, you were fucking
one of those arguing with everyone. You were fucking straight back into it. Straight back to fucking normal. First game back, I thought, you'll take it easy a bit. You're fucking arguing with the referee, arguing with Nisbet, and then you end up smiling with him afterwards.
Yeah, we were just joking around. That's what it's all about. If I'm not arguing out there, then what am I even doing? What am I doing? I've spent 2 years in Japan where I can't speak to anyone. They don't understand me. I've been saying stuff, but no one's been saying anything back.
Were you teeing up Nisbet for a guest appearance on the podcast?
Maybe we should get him on, to be honest. He would probably be not a bad one. He was trying. I said, "Do I speak any Japanese?" I said something back to him, and he didn't even know Japanese. So I don't know why he asked, but we'll get him on. We'll get him on the podcast. He's been on fire. So maybe he can be our next guest in a couple of weeks' time. We've got a few more lined up before him. But that's enough of the review, because we do have a special guest for our take 2 with her. Chloe Logarzo will be joining us very, very soon.
Logarzo, early ball in. Oh, it's got in! Oh my word! Chloe Logarzo showing all of her class.
All right, guys, we have Chloe Logarzo here for the second take. Unfortunately, you guys all know the issues that we ran into last time, but she's assured us that today she is home on her laptop and we're going to get a perfect audio. So welcome to the show, Chloe.
Thanks so much. Hopefully it's a perfect audio. We'll just have to wait and see.
We're
I'm sure it
we're
will
sure.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Everyone will, is eager to hear it. As we said last time when we were speaking to you, the questions that came through were the most that we had for any guests. So I'm sure there was a lot of probably disappointed people on Thursday when they tuned in and didn't hear you speak. They just heard me and Ben speak for 45 minutes. So here we are.
You can blame the tennis. That was all my fault.
It wasn't your fault. It's look, obviously the way we do the podcast is a little bit different to most other places where you would usually be in a studio. So first time we've had technical difficulties, but it's fine because you've been good enough to come back and do it again. So hopefully it's as good as the first time. No one's going to know what the first one sounded like anyway. So I'm sure it'll be a great chat, and I suppose we can kind of get right into it. Steph, if you're happy.
Yeah, I think we want to touch on all the exact same points that we did last time, because it was, for us anyway, just as other professional players, we loved hearing it, and I think it's great to share that with all the guests. So we'll start, I guess, back with your junior career, the setbacks that you faced when you were, a junior player before you broke into the Sydney FC ranks. How did that all happen? What were the setbacks that kind of stick out to you? And I guess who was the coach that believed in you to kind of give you that chance?
Yeah, so for me, I always say that my story is, just a little bit different to everybody else, because when I was younger, I was always told that I wasn't good enough and I wasn't strong enough, and I never really made it. Really, when I was younger, I kind of just was always cut from all of the state teams, always cut from all of the representative teams. And look, I look back now and I think they were right at that time, but I think it built me into the player that I am now. But me growing up with having a twin brother and an older sister, football was always going to be the thing that I played. And my dad was the manager. Sorry, my mum was the manager and my dad was the coach. And I've played ever since I was 5 years old. And I think for me, it was just about continuing to keep playing, whether I was going to be successful or not. But I knew that I had this drive inside me that was going to push me to be a little bit better than everybody else. I had an obsession with wanting to just be the best version of me. And along the way, I had some good coaches. One of them was Alan Stajic. And I was grateful that when I was going through all of my youth, that I changed schools when I was in year 6. I went from a private school to the Hill Sports High School in year 7. And at that point, there was a football program, where I would train 2 nights a week during school, actually. So 2 days during the week with him. And then that slowly built a relationship where then I was coming into Sydney FC training. But all through my youth, I went from playing with boys up until I was 12 years old and I wasn't allowed to play with boys anymore, into my first all-girls team. I went from there, being there for 5 years, from 12 to 15, 16 years old, and then being picked up into the NSWIS program, which was, again, run by Alan Stajic.
Yeah, great. So he obviously had a massive influence on you. And was it him that gave you your first opportunity at Sydney as well?
Yeah, so he was the first one who gave me an opportunity, and that opportunity came through an injury replacement contract. So I was just a kid that was training with Sydney, and then a player got injured and I filled in her spot for the first year. So he was the first person who gave me a real opportunity to be the best that I could be. And he really influenced me at, I think, the perfect time, from when I was 12 to all the way when he became my national team coach. So I think he shaped me to be the player that I am, for sure.
Yeah, wow. That's was he also the one that gave you your, first call up for the Matildas?
No, so Hesterine de Roos, who was a coach for a small period of time with the national team, she gave me my first call up and my first cap right before Stadge was appointed coach.
Yeah, well, I guess it's pretty crazy how how you have, kind of been on your journey, but it's kind of coincided with, I guess, some of the same moves of him. And we speak about it all the time when we're calling each other, just generally talking. And football it's a lot about, your ability and obviously you personally, but sometimes it does come down to a little bit of, right place, right time, getting the right coach and kind of being around or mentored by the right type of people. And he seems to be one that's obviously been around you, and I'm sure had a massive impact on your career and plenty of other girls as well in the system.
Yeah, I definitely think that the biggest part and shift in my career is when I realized that your life and your career depends on the people who surround you, and having the right people in your corner at the right time is so necessary. Having someone who understands you, and this just doesn't come from a coach's perspective, it comes from a strength and conditioning perspective, a physiotherapist perspective. It talks about whole entire well-being as a psychologist, everything that involves football. You need the right people in your corner who want you to be successful, because they're the ones who want to unlock and push you to be the best person that you want to be.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I'm keen for you to talk about this, but give us a little bit of an idea of what the landscape was like in the W League back then, as it was called, when you first signed with Sydney FC. For people that aren't maybe familiar with the setting of how it was back in 2011 or all that time ago, obviously the game has come such a long way, and probably people that are familiar with the recent success of the Matildas and seeing how the league's kind of blossomed in the last year since that and how much it's grown. But it's come a very long way, and I think the standards now are much higher than before.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, I would say, grateful enough to have seen the evolution of the W League, then called the W League, now called the A League. Um, when I first played for Sydney FC, we would turn up to my high school synthetic field, and Stadge would come with his maroon car, pull all the balls out of the back and all of our equipment. It was just him. We had one assistant coach and one physio. That was it. There was no bathrooms or anything available for us. We didn't have a locker room. We just sat on the brick wall that was there, like we were a club team, and we would train. And our Sydney FC gear would come in just like dribs and drabs. Like, I have a photo which I should send you, of my debut for Sydney FC, and I'm wearing, I think it's like a medium shirt and a medium shorts. And at the time, I weighed like maybe 48 kilos. So it was huge, and there was just no other like uniform for me to wear, so I just had to wear it for the whole entire season. Um, so where it's come from then to now, the resources that are available, the facilities that we have, although they could be a lot better, I think where we started to where we're going, the projection is really good, and especially in the last couple of years has it started to increase. The standards, the PFA, and everything that we have available to us. I would have never imagined, when I was like 16, 17 years old, that this would be where we are.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely have to send that one over so we can kind of put that up, because I think that would be very, very funny to see the oversized strip. The oversized clothes are in fashion now, but probably not when you're playing and you're trying to run away from your other midfielder or defender. And yeah, that would be great to see. But I guess for you, when you were playing back then, I'd love to know this. Was there, I guess, because there was a lot less that you had, were the players complaining about what they had, or was it almost just like, oh, it is what it is, we can't change anything? Or was there still that, the way it is now, you're driving for standards to be higher and higher, but because you had so little back then, were the players just happy with what they had, and that's kind of, the situation it was?
I mean, it's hard for me to say that, because I guess when I was a kid that I didn't really think about those standards being driven, because there were no examples for us to lean on and say, hey, they should be better, because that's all that I knew personally. But I'm sure the girls who were senior players in the team were pushing for standards to be higher. I know Alan Stajic for a long time was a person driving standards to be the same as the men's. And although once I got older and I started creeping into the national team and realizing the expectations of what we needed, they started to drive. But for me, being a kid, I was just happy to be there and stoked to just be getting a pat on my back and be training with the girls. And back then, the league had a lot of international players from all around the world. And for me, it was the first time I had a glimpse of what it was like to be surrounded by people who weren't from Australia, who were playing football for their career and who were loving doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy because I suppose even when you think back to, when we were all kids, like I look at some of the fields that we used to play on like every week. I drive past the local and I'm in Adelaide, Steph, Adelaide City, and I look at the grounds and I think, how the fuck did any of us look like good players on those pitches? But you just don't care about that stuff when you're that age, do you? You don't even think twice about the pitch. And I suppose, like what you said, if you don't know any different, then there's nothing really to complain about. But
Yeah.
it's obviously, it's amazing, obviously, the growth that has already happened, and obviously that everyone's still driving for more, because that's how it should always be. We should always be looking to do more and see how we can improve. But obviously your career from then, you've been overseas, you played at quite a few different clubs, Colorado Pride, the Jets, Eskilstuna, is that pronounced
Nice.
correctly?
Yeah.
Eskilstuna United.
Yeah.
Norway, Bristol City, Kansas City. Like, obviously you've played in a lot of different places. I suppose, how are the transitions for you? Obviously you left Australia the first time you went overseas. What was that like for you? Was it hard to kind of adapt? How were the standards different to Australia back then when you first went over?
Yeah, when I left, it was almost immediately out of high school, and I went to the second division in the United States for Colorado Pride, and it was their inaugural season in the league. And at that time, it was all the players who were coming from college that couldn't get paid to play because they were in college, needed a season during summer to go and play. And so I went over there um, with no expectations. I went with an Australian coach over there, and for me, it was the first glimpse of what it could be like if I wanted to take football seriously, because I wasn't getting paid. I live with a host family, but it was 4 or 5 months, and I had an absolute blast. And I wasn't scared to go over. I was more excited to kind of have freedom and leave home and do all the things that I guess I wanted to do. And I had a great season. I scored the most goals I've scored in a season, same with assists, and lucky to get Rookie of the Year and do some incredible things over there at, I think I was 18 or 19. And that was a lot of fun. And then I came back to Sydney FC, and I think I had like this reality check of expectations being crushed, because had such a high when I was overseas that when I came back, I didn't do so well. So that was a reality check for me.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
that's, it's always probably the hardest thing, I reckon, as a young player, when you do well, and then all of a sudden, for yourself, you have these expectations, but also other people. In your first game, nobody knows your first season. You kind of just coast through. You don't overthink it. You just go and play. And then all of a sudden, the mental side of the game, which is the biggest for me, in my opinion, starts to creep in, and you start to have these doubts. Oh, can I do it again? What do the other players think of me? And so on and so forth. So I guess, how did that play out for you in that season with Sydney? Was it Newcastle that you came back to as well? And then after that, is that the reason why you kept pushing yourself to go overseas to, I guess, get out of your comfort zone?
I think, when I came back, I had this expectation. Stadge wanted me to do really well with the team, and coming off a season where I was scoring and I was pretty fit, because in Colorado, the altitude's really high. So I had altitude training, which was new to me as well. And no, the expectation of that was that I was going to do well, but I think my attitude towards where I was and what I was doing was not met by my expectations of playing. And then I got too much of a big head. But I think after that, I really wanted to go back overseas, and I wanted to play and get paid for what I was doing. But I also had this idea that I never wanted to sign a 2-year deal, because I wanted to go to as many countries as I could. And, if I'm going to live this life once, I want to be able to travel and experience all the different cultures while I'm getting paid and playing and doing what I love. So I did that for a few years, and I really enjoyed it. I went to Sweden, and then I went to Norway, and then I went to England. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I need to be in one place at one time for more than, 10 months, because going overseas and picking your life up and meeting new people and doing that for 10 months and then picking it up and doing it all over again gets exhausting, not just for my mental state, but for my body. I never had consistency with playing. Um, I would have one strength and conditioning coach, and then I would have a completely different one. And that really threw my body in a loop, not having the consistency that I needed. You know, when I was in Sweden, we would Olympic power lift the day after a game. So it was just like completely different to like what we would do here in Australia or what they would do in America. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of the thing that I've learned over the years from traveling all around, is that maybe just finding a club and settling down after I've had all of these experiences would have been really good.
That's unreal. Look, they're all experiences. I suppose you take the football side, but also you get life experiences as well. Like, to be able to say you've lived in those countries is unbelievable. You know, from all accounts, and everyone that I speak to that's lived in Scandinavia, they say it's like one of the best places to live in the world. How was the actual experience of living in those countries, the standards of living and everything like that with the club?
Yeah, going over to Scandinavian countries like Norway, well, I will separate Norway from Sweden because I think Sweden I had a much of a better time, but in Sweden they really push for the lifestyle. They want you to be, you know, I lived by myself in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I loved that because I got the freedom that I wanted to, and I really enjoyed that aspect of being able to like go and be with the team when I wanted to be with the team, but also be by myself. And I loved that team. I was 10 minutes from training, 10-minute walk. I got a bike, rocked up, and everything that I needed was there. But then on the flip side, then you can go to teams in different countries and have poor experiences with your living situation because you don't get to pick every single time. Sometimes you can put in your contract that you want to live by yourself, and sometimes you don't. So for this situation in Norway, I live with 6 other people in a house, which sounds crazy because it is. Um, and going to work with the same people and coming home and living with them is nuts. I lived with 4 Brazilians and 2 or 3 other Australians. Ellie Carpenter stayed for 3 months while we were in Norway. It just is like bonkers. And that was full on for me. I think it was too much. I ended up leaving the club earlier than anticipated because of the cultural environment that was there. But look, I mean, every experience is every experience. I look back at Norway and I don't think about those times. I think about the times that I spent where I had a really good time. I was hiking mountains and we did some amazing things. I played in the Champions League and had all of those fun experiences. And sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. But sometimes I think to myself that if I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am and have certain opinions on certain things throughout my life. So I'm grateful for everything. I think it's just being open minded to the expectations that you have when you go somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's obviously very different from now. I think for females it's a bit more set in stone. You have your full season, but obviously for you back then, especially when you could jump between whether it was America, whether it was leagues in Scandinavia, whether it was the W League, it probably made it a different challenge as well. But it's great that now, I guess, you've got the A-League Women's here where you can have a full 22 game season, or if you go somewhere else over to England where you actually have those games, because as great as those experiences are for you, you want to have the best career possible. And you only get one chance at that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think, we're talking like 7 years ago that all this stuff was happening. So the evolution of women's football now, it's incredible to see where we can go with it. Now I look at the kids in my Western team and I look at them and I think you guys have so much to be able to look forward to, because where we've come now and it keeps building, the expectations of clubs are increasing and the money that's invested into the leagues are so much more. So what we had to go through, hopefully they're not going to go through the same things, and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, no, that's what we need at the end of the day. We need it for football as a whole, men's and women's, to keep driving, to keep growing, because there's still so much more room for improvement in both the men's and the women's. But I think obviously off the back of, the Matilda success, the home World Cup, I suppose we can, take so much positives out of that and see the growth already. And hopefully that continues for a very long time. But on the Matildas, obviously you got your debut pretty soon. Obviously, it came quite quickly. For some players, it takes a long time. You debuted in 2011-12, was it? And in the A League. In the A League.
Yeah, in the A-League. Yeah.
This is our research. And your Matilda's debut came in 2013, so not that long after. So tell us a little bit about, was that during your time in Colorado that came about?
To be honest, I actually don't know how it came about. Again, my call up into the national team was through an injury that happened in the national team, and I was an injury replacement player. And I always say now, like, I think if I was to give anyone advice, that it would always be to stay ready, even if it wasn't your position in the first place. If someone gets injured and you feel that spot, you want to be ready to be able to take it with open arms. And I think that that's how my career started, both in the A League and also in the national team. But yeah, it was a shock to me as well when I got called up. And in my first camp, I got my first cap as well. So I was extremely grateful for Hesterian to be able to give me that. But after that period of time when Hesterian brought me in, I wasn't back in the national team for a few years until Staj came into the fold. And even when he first came in, it took me a little bit to be able to get my way back in there.
Yeah. I think what you said is 100% right. And sometimes the disappointment of getting a rejection or not making a squad, or, you know, not being in the starting 11, for example, people can drop their heads, you know, whether it's at a professional level or a junior level. And, you know, you never know what's going to happen. Someone could get an injury. Someone could wake up sick. Someone could, you know, anything could happen at the end of the day. But if you then get called up and you don't take your chance, you've only got yourself to blame with that, because you can't control a lot of the other things of what coaches are going to do and who they're going to select. But if you're always ready, then when the opportunity presents itself, at least you know you're ready to take that. And I'm sure, you know, throughout your career, you've probably done that a number of times. You mentioned with Sydney FC, it was an injury replacement contract now, and an injury replacement to get you into the Matildas. So obviously, you know, you were the next one kind of to be picked, but you had to take that opportunity when it came. And getting involved with the Matildas, and then the disappointment of not making the 2015 World Cup squad, but then scoring in the 2019 one, and then missing again in the 2023 one. Take us through, I know there's a lot of stuff that happened in between that, but kind of take us through a little bit of the journey for you in the Matildas, the ups, the downs. You know, for me, you know, I would do anything to go to a World Cup, to score in a World Cup like you did is the best feeling in the world. But I'm sure then on the other side, you then missed out on this latest one, especially, which would have been heartbreaking, because, you know, you were part of that generation to I guess make the Matildas a powerhouse, and to not be able to be on the field to actually help them would have been really, really tough.
Yeah, look, 2015, I look back now, and granted, I wasn't ready to make that team anyway. And, you know, I had what I thought was the expectations of making that team at that time. I thought I did everything that I possibly needed to and should have done to be in that team. But the level that I took my football to after that was next, you know, like for me, then I really honed into like the nutrition, the psychology side, everything that I didn't think was important enough, the little 1%ers. So after the 2015, it was my goal to make the 2019 World Cup. And I was so driven for 4 years to be able to make it, because I didn't want to disappoint myself. And this time I was going to do it 100% right. And in January, the year of the World Cup, we were playing against Perth in the grand final for the A-League against Sam. And there was about 5-10 minutes to go in the game. We were already winning. I think it was 4-3 or 4-2. And I stuck my leg out for a tackle, and I got kicked, and I fractured my fibula. And I thought to myself that I've got this all over again. Like, I'm going to miss out on this World Cup. It's like 6 months until the World Cup. I need to get this sorted. I need to get myself fit. Like, oh my God, I'm going to miss out again. And I became like so fixated on making sure that I was going to make this World Cup. I had, you know, a stationary bike in my front room with a picture of the World Cup on the wall, taped on the wall. And that was the only thing that I could look at and see when I would get up in the morning and do a bike session, because I couldn't run or I couldn't do anything. So I was so driven, and I was lucky enough that, again, I had a coach in my corner, Ante, who took a risk on me in the 2019 World Cup. So from that grand final day in January to the first game in our preseason of our pre-camp, I hadn't played a game. So
Oh,
leading into the World Cup, I had one pre-game and then I played in the World Cup, and I was lucky enough that he believed that I could get in the shape that I needed to, and I did, which I was extremely grateful for. And I had, at this time, I think probably the best tournament I've played in a long time since the 2016 Olympic qualifiers. And for that first time, it was me really playing for myself. For the years and years I had played for other people, I played for coaches that doubted me. I played for, my family. I played for everybody else. But for 2019, I played for myself. And I think that's why I played pretty well. And I was free and I could do what I wanted to because I accomplished a goal that I had set for the last 4 years. And I was proud to have been able to do it. And then my career has been ebbs and flows since the day it began. So 2023, 3 years out before the World Cup, we found out that we were going to host the World Cup, and I was so excited. I said, "This is the once in a lifetime opportunity. You're going to be at the peak of your career, 28 years old, playing at a home World Cup. This is going to be incredible." So everything in that 3-year period was geared towards making all of the right decisions to be ready for this World Cup. So that meant, if I had to sacrifice even the things that I sacrificed before, like going out and partying and doing things that I would normally do, having a glass of wine for dinner, that all stopped. Even came down to playing with Sydney FC in 2019, maybe 2020. And I left them to make sure that I could go and play in England to get as many games as I possibly could. I went to England, COVID happened, and the whole entire world shut down. So that decision led to another decision which ended up keeping me in England with a team that I didn't want to be in. That then led me to getting traded and going back to America. And in that transition, I spent 2 months in England without a team and in COVID, which meant that nothing was open, which meant I was literally running the roads of London for 2 months waiting for my visa to go through. While I was doing that, when I went to America, I was like thrusted back into playing, and it led from one thing to another. I had a foot injury, a hip injury, and then we went away to camp. We went away to camp to Ireland. And I just remember thinking, like, this camp's crazy. Like, we're doing testing. Everyone's come off of this ridiculous season. We've had 2 years of COVID, inconsistent training. And we played Ireland in a training match. That was all fine. And at that time, I had this really bad thing with my hip. I could barely do a Copenhagen with my groin. I couldn't finish the fitness test. And I had this thing with my toe. And we were playing against Ireland in the actual match. In the first half, I was flying. I was like, this is great. I'm finally getting back into playing like myself. This is going to be pretty good. Hopefully I'll be able to like show Tony that I can do this. Bang. Tore my ACL. So that was another thing. We're 2 years out from the World Cup now. And I think to myself, I've got enough time. So the girls, when I did my knee, they thought I hurt my ankle. So when I got taken off of the field, and the game was over, none of the girls actually knew until they walked into the locker room and saw me in a knee brace. And they were like, Chloe, we're so sorry. And I was like, yo, it's fine. Like, I've got enough time. It's okay. Like, I've already switched my brain. I had 5 minutes to have a cry about it. And then I was already in go mode again, trying to get myself ready to be prepared. And I did pretty well with my rehab. I had a couple of setbacks, but 9 months goes by and I get cleared to play, but I don't get game time. I'm not getting game time, and I'm running out of time. What I think is I'm running out of time. A year goes past, and I finally get my first minutes playing with the national team. Then I decide, okay, I'm going to leave Kansas City and I'm going to come back to the A-League to help myself get as many minutes as I can. So I'm going to do a 12-game loan with Western United to get me ready for this World Cup. I get 5 games in, which is the most that I have in a year since my ACL, so slowly integrating. And I get plantar fasciitis. But this plantar fasciitis was like, something wasn't right about it. I knew something wasn't right about it. I needed to figure out what was going on because all the rehab that we were doing wasn't working. So I ended up finding out that I had an impingement in the nerve. So they needed to go in and solder off of this nerve in my foot that was being trapped with my plantar fasciitis. And when that happened, I could slowly start doing my rehab. But now it's 6 months out from the World Cup and I haven't played. And from the time that I made my first game with the national team until now, I've played a total of maybe, I don't know, 2.5 games, a total. So I'm freaking out and I'm knowing that I'm like getting closer and time's running out, but I'm trying to keep myself sane enough to be able to be prepared if I was going to make the team. Pre-camp comes and I'm 2.5 weeks into full training and I'm thinking to myself, like, I know I can get myself fit, but I just need to have a coach that's going to be able to allow me to have the time to get there. And in the end, unfortunately, I just ran out of time. I needed 3 more weeks, I think. I'm saying I think I need 3 more weeks to be able to get myself fit enough to be able to go to that World Cup. And unfortunately, that's the harsh reality of what it is. It is what it is. And I tried to make all of the right decisions to make myself in the national team. And I did all of the right things. I made every single sacrifice that would have made me successful to be there. But unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't happen. And that's okay because I am now, I guess it's almost a year since the World Cup's happened. I'm now back into the form that I really wanted to be in going into the lead up for the World Cup. And out of all of that, I was able to do the broadcasting for the World Cup with Optus. And I was grateful enough to still be a part of the World Cup, not in the way that I wanted to, but in a way that I can look back and be proud of, what I left there.
That is a fucking roller coaster. I think that's the only word for it.
Yeah, my whole entire career has been full of roller coasters, and it's crazy to think that you can have people who never once have an injury in their whole entire career, and they're so extremely lucky. I don't think they realize how lucky they are, but I've been riddled with shitty little injuries or big injuries that just like
Everything.
come out.
Sounds like you've had a bit of everything.
Yeah, but look, I mean, along the way, I think I am the person that I am because of all of those things that have happened to me, all the adversity that I've had that has allowed me to gain like a little thicker skin on the outside that's helped me. If I've gone and gotten injured, I've then lent on the things that outside of football that I've really enjoyed, and it's allowed me to find out who I am away from football. And I can't express enough how important it is to find yourself. Like for me, Chloe Logarzo as a person and Chloe Logarzo as a footballer, having those two people balanced is so important, because if you don't, then you get mixed up you go into this downward spiral of having a massive identity crisis on knowing who's really there for you through the good times and the bad times.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we can't play forever. There's going to become a point in time where we have to stop, and Chloe Logarzo, the footballer, ends then. And for you, probably going through a lot of that, as you spoke about, it set you up for when you do decide to finish. You're probably, what you like, what makes you happy, what I guess you want to do post football. And some players that never have that, when they stop the game, they're lost and they don't understand it, or their career gets cut short because they're not good enough or whatever it may be when they're 25, 26. And those players, we've played with quite a few, and they're really in a bad place. So I guess you've still achieved so much, and you have a lot to be proud of, really, not just on the field, but also the mental side, but off the field. And just hearing you speak about it, you're obviously still emotional about it, but also, you like to look at the positives out of it. And, the Women's World Cup, that must have been the most magical thing, I guess, for you to experience from a fan's perspective, and to see the amount of young girls and even young boys coming into the stadiums, and you being able to, I guess, talk about the game and experience it from that other side of it. So talk us through your role with Optus during it, and seeing, I guess, football and women's football, more importantly, take over Australia for a good month.
Yeah, I mean, when we found out we were going to get the bid, the expectations that we set out to do was kind of to inspire the next generation of female footballers that were going to come through. And I think along the way that the Matildas inspired every single person. It didn't matter the gender and it didn't matter the age. And I think that was the most incredible thing that I got to do and witness. Because as players, you get a small dose of it. You kind of you make sure that you keep the external noise external when you're inside camp, and you go from a hotel to the field and then the field back to the hotel, and you don't really get to feel the ambience of the stadium and the hours people have spent to sit there and watch you. And I feel privileged to have been able to be a part of that, especially on home soil, in such an important integral part of Australian sport in general. When you think about Courtney Vine's moment, scoring the penalty to secure something that we've never done before. And for me, it goes down in Australian history the same as what I was influenced by Kathy Freeman winning gold. It's exactly, these kids are going to talk about this when they're 29 years old, thinking about that moment that changed their perspective on sport. And I think that is the coolest part, because that wasn't something that was so evident in our minds that we were going to be able to do. And to be able to make history, not flunk out early on, is special. And that's got to do with every single Australian jumping on the bandwagon and supporting the girls and showing up when they needed them to. And I think when you think about what the girls did then, it still has the same impact right now. Like if I speak to anyone in the street about the World Cup, it's like it happened yesterday. They still have the same feelings that they felt when they were there at the World Cup. And I think that's what Australia needed, not just because of a sports event, but because of everything that happened with COVID. I feel like people lost touch with, the love of sport, the love of being around crowds and being around people. And then when that happened, I feel like it really brought Australia back into being, the fun sport loving country that we are.
Yeah. I like I remember when it was on, and it was just ridiculous. Like, I could have never imagined it to be so big. And each game that was going by, I think, like what you said, the girls, they did so well to obviously actually have a good World Cup and not flunk out early. But towards the end, I was more invested in the story and the narrative and how many people were getting inspired from the Matildas and what they were doing, more so than them actually winning it. I wanted them to keep winning, so like there could be another game where all these people got to go and get behind them and the whole country was behind them. And you saw Melbourne was full, Sydney was full. It didn't matter where the game was. There was people everywhere. There was crowds everywhere. And it was just unbelievable. And from me, I remember watching that penalty shootout. And were you more nervous being outside of it and doing the stuff with Optus than actually being on the pitch? Because I remember watching that penalty shootout and I was in the car. I felt sick.
Yeah, I was literally under the table crying. Every time we missed, I was crying because I was like thinking back to all the times that, we've been in that situation before and we've failed. And I think that, especially looking at girls who stepped up, who I know have missed penalties in previous major tournaments, who have stepped up and taken it and then scored, it must have felt so electric to do it at home on home soil, but also to do it and feel like you have redemption for the times that you've missed before. And then on top of that, just the roar of the crowd. I would have loved to have had like a decimal reading inside the stadium when that happened, and to have the AFL stop and people in the concourse of the AFL stadium stopping and watching that moment. I think for me, I don't even know. I was beside myself. I was literally beside myself. I didn't know what to do.
It's actually insane. Like, I remember at the time I was on an away trip. We were in Japan, and I can't remember where we were in, but it was like dinner time, and I was like, I'm going to be late for dinner because I'm not missing the end of this. And I was there on my VPN. The VPN's lagging. I'm like, come on. I'm like trying to record it when I think, all right, if they score this, we win it. And they miss, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, come on. Like, and then finally, obviously, like, to see, the players step up, because when you're watching from the outside, and if you've never played football at a decent level, a penalty does look so easy. But when you're out there, the pressure of it, like in training, no worries. You'll score 99 out of 100, unless the keeper's ridiculously good. You score because there's no pressure. It's easy to put it exactly where you want it. You add in a bit of pressure of a game, but this isn't just any other game. This was the game when literally the entire nation was watching. People that have probably never watched a game of football before were watching this game. So for the girls to actually have the mental resilience and I guess put their hand up, like you said, to actually want to take the penalty shows so much courage. And yeah, the best part about it, like you said, Ben, was that we actually got to have another game. I love going on Twitter or X now the next day and seeing like the analytics from Channel 7 or the records that have been broken. I'm like, oh, surely it can't be more than the last one.
more,
And then it's like another few million. And you're like, imagine if we got to the final. I reckon the entire population would have been watching that game. So it's crazy. It's crazy. But now on to, I guess, where you are today. Do you have the aspirations to get back into the Matilda setup? I know you're concentrating on your club football with Western United, but is that now a goal? Do you have a picture of the next World Cup on your wall and you're looking at that every morning?
I'm too old for that. I don't know. Nah, I think, I know we touched on this in our last interview, and I think, look, I always have aspirations to want to be into the national team, and I think everyone does. And, once you've been there, you have that feeling and desire that that's always what you want to do. And for me, I think it's, again, finding the love and having consistent love with the game, because I feel as if I don't love it, then I don't want to play it. And if I'm not going to love it and I'm not going to put 100% into it, then I don't want to have to give less than 100, and no one deserves to have that either. So right now, again, it's about finding the love. Playing here at Western, it's really helping me. I have an incredible support network who want me to be successful and who've allowed me to be able to go through all of the craziness that I'm going through at the moment of whether I want to continue to keep playing. Some days are good, some days are bad. But I have those people around me who are going to be able to put their arm around me and kind of get me to just do whatever I want to do. It's not forced. It's just about, they can see a little glimpse in my eye of wanting to make the Olympic team, but I have this disappointment idea in my mind that if I don't make it, then I'll kind of go back into the shell that I was after the World Cup, and I just got to get over that. I feel like you both would know the resilience that has to come with it. So it's about building that up every single day, and I think Western is probably the best place that I could possibly be right now to be able to have that. And the group of girls that I have are making me fall in love with the game again, and the idea of, being fit and being competitive and enjoying, the lifestyle that we have as elite athletes.
Yeah, I think, look, it's hard because I've never been in your position, so I've never had to worry about not making the next World Cup because I'm 28 and I still haven't got a cap. So it's looking pretty sure that I can just focus on my club football. But I think, that's all you can really do, isn't it? Like, just focus and try and enjoy. Obviously, look, you've been through such a hard time with injuries that I'm sure now you're just loving actually playing consistent football and being able to actually go out there and show kind of yourself and everyone else what you can do, because when you're injured, you can't do that. And as a footballer, you only get a certain number of years to play at a good level, at a professional level, and being injured, you can't do that. And it's what we love at the end of the day. That's why we're doing it. We all started playing football because we loved it. And how, I guess, has it been to obviously come to Western? You guys are absolutely flying at the moment, hoping to hopefully go one better than last season. And I suppose, how's it been just, you guys have had a change of coach, Kat's come in, and how is it there at the moment with the girls?
Yeah, it's great. Look, I mean, I think the way that the girls handled having a coach change in, the start of the season, I think they did tremendous. And, hats off to Kat coming in and being able to get the girls to buy into the system and the way that she wants to play. And hats off to the girls for being able to take on all of that information, because I know what it's like, and I remember being, young and it being the start of me going into professional setting, because we have a lot of younger girls that having so much information thrown in your face at one time can be overwhelming, but the way that they've handled it has been amazing. And I think now, once we've had her for, 6 or 7 games, you can start to see that we're getting more comfortable with the system that we play. And I enjoy the fact that we can go so effortlessly between systems. But yeah, I think we found one that's really good, and we've just had 3 successful games. And even if we're not playing good football, we're still getting results. And I think that's what the keys to a successful team or a championship winning team is. And I think that's what we lacked last year. So I'm excited to continue. We've still got so many games to go, 7 or 8 games in the league. But yeah, I think now is like really the exciting time. We're coming good towards the end of the season. And plus Tassie served both of us pretty well.
No, not quite as good for us as for you guys. But you
Hey,
guys
not bad at
grinded
all.
out. Yeah,
Not
no, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I got on the score sheet, so that was all right.
you.
Steph,
well,
should we get into the questions?
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't want to keep you too long, Chloe. But we do
Yeah.
have. There's a lot of questions here.
Yeah. Well, let's go. We'll go 3, potentially 4, if if I guess you don't answer, because some of them do overlap. So, I'll go with the first one, which is probably a very, very basic one, but it's from @CT_09. Who inspired you to play soccer?
I would say that the inspiration for me to play soccer came from both my dad and my grandfather. I always joke and say that like it was always going to be the sport that I played because I have a Scottish grandfather and my dad's Italian. So kind of both of them big football fans, and my dad played when he was younger. So I think it was drawn from them too. And then I think the athletic side of my game comes from my mum, as she was a long distance runner. So thanks for the engines, mum. But yeah, all the inspiration that I think first starting out came from then. And then obviously the influence from my footballing aspect probably came from Maradona and, Ronaldo, I guess, and John Terry. So
Yeah,
they're the influences that
I'm sure the girls or even boys in years to come, if they're on this podcast in 10 or 15 years time, they might be saying Chloe Logarzo was the inspiration. So I'm sure there will be plenty saying that. But it's awesome to hear that you got it from your family. I think that's where most people fall in love with the game, isn't it? Like, playing with the ball in the backyard, or I've just had a baby and he's only 8 weeks old, but I've got him in the Arsenal kit. I'm doing headers with him. I'm making him kick the ball, and I'm like, you know what? I think he's got some potential.
You shouldn't be doing headers with him at this age.
It's a softball, don't worry. No concussions. It's soft. I'm like literally throwing it at his head, and he just sees it hits, and he just like looks like this. I'm like, not bad.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Poor kid that he didn't. I can't believe he's in an Arsenal shirt. That's the only problem.
Hey, he's got no say. That's the unfortunate part.
I don't know who do you go for, Chloe, in the Premier League?
I would have to say Chelsea. Chelsea.
It has to be Chelsea. She said John Terry.
Yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe she just had a crush on him.
Wait, she's not a centre back, so like it has to be Chelsea.
Hey, that's where my tackles come from, So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
We'll go next,
what do you got, and what question you picking?
Yeah. @Grace_Simpson. Best memory of your career, either club or country.
Best memory for my country would be scoring my first goal at the 2019 World Cup. It was a game against Brazil, and we won 3-2. And I got an assist. But that game was funny because I never think about goal celebrations. And I think before that game, I had this vision of doing a goal celebration because Laura Alloway got injured 2 days or 3 days before the tournament had started. And she was number 5, and she sat next to me in the locker room, and she would always sing me a song called Superwoman. And so I thought to myself the night before the game, if I score in this game, I'll do like a Superwoman or a Superman pose, which I don't know why. I like literally never think about it, but I think I just like thought it into existence. And in that game, I had her number on my wrist, and I scored, and I was like, oh my God, now I actually have to go and do the pose. And I think that's probably my fondest memory because it was for her, but it was also for me, and it was a great moment. And I have an iconic photo from it, and I really enjoy it.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
That I don't know why that actually gave me goosebumps. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
It's unreal. Well, you scored against Brazil in a World Cup. Like that in itself is just fucked.
Yeah. playing against Brazil probably is always my fondest memories because we have such a great rivalry between us. We play, I wouldn't say similar, they have so much more flair than us, but I think the styles that we play work really well in a nice game, nice like to watch game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. I guess then the other part of it is like, we're individuals in a team sport, but knowing the heartbreak that you've gone through, I'm sure when other people get injured, you can really understand that and empathize a lot more as well. So, someone's on, cloud nine and they've just, made their debut. They've got a dream move to a team. And then there's another person that's just had the most devastating news of their career and they're out injured. And football's such a cutthroat industry where 1 minute you're on top of the world and the next minute you're forgotten because they need people that are fit. They need people that can play. So it's amazing to hear that you were still thinking about, I guess, your teammate in that moment, because that's such a special moment for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you go through the things that you go through in your team, it's hard to describe because no one really understands all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you go through to be in your position, except for the people who are surrounded and doing the exact same thing as you. And I think when you spend years and years and years together, giving the same sacrifices and going through the same shit, like you become a little bit more than friends. And all the girls in the national team, you hear it all the time that we spend more time with them than we do with our families. So most of the time they become more like family members than friends. And in times like that, you can empathize with them in the regards that you know exactly what it feels like, and you would do anything to give up the position to be able to have them there with you. But yeah, all you can do is just empathize and know exactly how it feels to be in their position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she would have fucking loved, like, she would have loved that. And at the end of the day, nothing kind of brings back like what you kind of went through. Nothing is as good as actually being there and being able to do it. But knowing that you've got the right people around you and in your corner, which is another thing that you've said a lot, is just as important, because the injuries are one thing, the setbacks are another thing, but having those people there will be the ones that will kind of determine how you get through those injuries and where you end up on the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go, I don't know, unless you want to ask another one.
One more.
Steph,
I'll do.
go, yeah.
I'll do one more quick one. From Chantel with 3 E's on the end, 19. And this ties in with something that we wanted to speak about as well. So what are you most looking forward to when you finish your career? So is this something where you've started a football academy or about to start a football academy with fellow professional Emily Gilnick, if I pronounced her name correctly?
You have nailed it.
Is that something that you want to do post-career? You want to become a coach, or you want to coach young kids, professionals, or is this something just that you've thought of between yourself? You're both in Melbourne and you really want to give back to, I guess, the next generation.
I think Future Baller, which is the clinic that Emily and I are running, I think it was born, not that I think, I know, it was born out of the idea of the World Cup. And, we both missed out on the World Cup through injury. And I think this footballing clinic that we've got, we want to dive a little bit deeper than what the surface level of being a footballer is. And it really is going to gear towards the realistic idea of talking about mental health, talking about, your physical performance, and really setting goals and imagining what your life would be like when you're not actually at football, and kind of giving you a whole package into what it would be like to be a professional athlete. Not the 2 hours that you are at training, but the harsh reality of, the other 22 hours of the day that you are, because the best of the best aren't just made on the field, they're made off of it. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's the gap that we're missing in this next generation of people, is the idea that, yeah, you could be incredible for the 2 hours that you're at training, but if you want to have a long sustained career, it's going to be everything that you do off of it that's going to make you the best. And up here is what's going to make you the best footballer, because hard work and determination will always beat talent. And I think that's the thing, and the image and the message that we kind of want to get out to the next generation of Matildas who want to come through and who want to, wear the Australian badge and represent Australia. And that's one thing that we want to bring with Future Baller. And I think that was born out of the disappointment of both of us missing the World Cup, was the idea that we have so much to give to the game that's not necessarily us playing, but all of the nitty gritty stuff that we went through that we can help pass down onto the next generation so that they can be unstoppable.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Sounds pretty good. Maybe, I know they're in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
Maybe Ben Garuccio can sign up to the one in Melbourne and
Hey.
learn a thing or two.
Maybe you can get your cap after 28 years.
Fucking hell. Yeah, I'll just see myself out of the podcast today, maybe. Fucking hell.
It's possible. Bruno Fornaroli, what was he, 35 when he got his first cap? I know he changed from Uruguayan to Australian, but it's possible. If you go here, you set the goals with Emily and Chloe, they'll teach you how to actually make the squad, which is the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I'll have a think about it.
I've got connections in higher places, maybe.
No, it's great. It's unreal. It's obviously, I suppose, something that the three of us, that we're not getting, I suppose, any younger, and there has to be a way to always give back, and that's a top way. So I wish you both all the best with it. I hope it's a massive success.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I think it's always one of those things, like, everyone wants to leave the game in a better place than they found it. I think this is just the extension of an expression of a way that we can be feeling as if we have done something more than, we could have done. So,
yeah, no, that's a great way, I think, to sign off, to let you go. Thank you so much for jumping on again for the second time, and for being as vulnerable and as open as you were. I think all of the listeners will, if they're not watching on YouTube and they're just listening to it, they would hear the passion and the disappointment and probably all the emotions that you felt throughout your career. They're going to be feeling on their end while they're listening. And any boys or girls that are listening to this will understand that, it's not just going to be a simple ride to the top, whether they are a footballer, whether they become a lawyer or a hairdresser, whatever it may be. It's not a simple path. Life's really tough, and you've explained it in a very, very open and honest way. So thank you again so much for your time and for all your, I guess, amazing words.
Thanks, boys. I really appreciate it.
Football Friends with Ben and Stef is proudly brought to you by the Inner Game Journals, started by none other than our co-host Stefan Moore. The Athlete Performance Journals were created to help athletes of all abilities become more self-aware through goal setting and reflection. On or off the field, the mental side of the game is so crucial to help you feel and perform at your best. Head over to www.theinnergamejournals.com and use code FOOTBALLFRIENDS to get 15% off all products. If you're a club, school or academy, you're in luck. Stefan also runs workshops, and he's just released the app version, which will allow you to give direct feedback to players. Download the app for free today. Search The Inner Game on the App Store.
Another great chat with Chloe. Take two, as you said beforehand, but you know what? We had to get it back on. It was so good the first time. We were spewing that we couldn't get it out to you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed that chat as much as we did. It's so good to hear our first female guest, and just so good to hear her stories, all of her setbacks, which she's had a lot of setbacks in her career. But I think just that mentality to keep coming back, to keep making herself the best version that she can be. And I think without that mentality, she probably wouldn't have had the highs that she has had in her career, because probably some people that have injuries like that end up without a career or out of a job. So full credit to her.
Yeah, no, exactly right, as we touched on. But we'll go into the round 16 preview, and we'll quickly skim over these games, because this is a bit of a longer episode with the amount of gold coming out of Chloe's mouth, that we needed to keep her talking and keep on, I guess, sharing all of our experiences. But on Tuesday, if I'm not wrong, which it would have just happened because this will come out on your Thursday, Wellington played Central Coast in a top-of-the-table clash. I think this is due to the AFC Cup coming up for Central Coast. So that would have been a great game if you watched it. If not, check on the highlights out. But Friday night, we have Adelaide v Perth Glory. Big game for us to bounce back. Another one at home. Perth in form, but we need to make sure that we do bounce back. You're travelling across to New Zealand, the toughest trip potentially in the A-League. Western United have got Phoenix. Victory at home to MacArthur. The Roar at home to City. Central Coast, a big game against Sydney FC, and then on Sunday we have Western Sydney v Newcastle. So some really good games, and hopefully a lot of good performances from myself and you, Ben, and hopefully we're both smiling on the pod next week with 3 points and a goal each as well. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. I wouldn't be complaining with that. But no, it's should be another good week. I'm sure there'll be a lot of goals again. I think it's 25 or something last round again. So the goals have been ridiculous this season so far, and entertaining games everywhere. But I suppose we can close out the episode with this. Remember, guys, if you're not following us on our socials yet, next week we are going to be doing the giveaway for our 1,000th follower. We've got a few more now, so it might be 2,000 by the time you guys follow it. So if you're not already following us, it's at Football Friends Pod on Insta and TikTok, at Ben and Steph Pod on X, and at Football Friends with Ben and Steph on YouTube, or just actually Football Friends with Ben and Steph on YouTube. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, friend.
Fuck you lot, where's the beer?